Yeah, so Fellini Satyricon, Jack, you want to introduce it since you were like the catalyst behind it?
Yeah, so I was the one that wanted to watch this movie, I guess. I'll take the fall. When did it come out? Do you know?
1969,
So, yeah,
the height of like the fucking cultural revolution, and you can totally tell that it came out in that time because of just like the looks of everyone and the sexuality and the drugs and the trippy atmosphere.
Yeah.
It's a very progressive tone.
I love 1969 for a film.
It was like very like,
The same year that Medium Cool came out.
Ooh. It all ties together.
Yeah.
Yeah, Fellini Satyricon by Federico Fellini, one of my favorite directors. His take on ancient Roman story, just in a very weird sci-fi way. He describes it as a sci-fi movie, which from the look, I definitely get. The set pieces are crazy in this movie. Definitely his biggest overall looking movie that he's done up to that time. The story's like very convoluted, very confusing. It kind of follows like this path of storytelling that was like lost in a way. So it's like kind of like ancient Roman, and it's hard to really distinguish what's going on. The transitions are very jarring. Like you'll jump from one story to the next, and apparently it's all supposed to flow together. Didn't feel like that at all. Just in terms of like Fellini's talent, I appreciated it.
Sure.
You know, like what he was able to pull off was, I thought, really impressive.
I think in terms of him, I mean, he's known as one of the most ambitious and boundary-pushing filmmakers of his generation. I feel like that movie, even though it didn't resonate with us as a whole, I feel like was just a kind of a really special product to witness. Because like you said, the story was very loose and not really, like, didn't have a connected tissue between things, so it was really abstract, but like the sets were incredible. Just like how ambitious, he's like blending, like you said, sci-fi and like historical fiction, and just the look of it is so, like Felix was saying, like this, it felt like postmodern, pushing the boundaries of filmmaking as it like transitioned during the 70s. Like, and you don't think of Fellini as those generation of filmmakers, but he like adapted to the times well. Like I haven't seen Amarcord, but I feel like he adapted to like where film was going.
We're watching that next.
Yeah, we'll definitely watch Amarcord next. But yeah, I appreciated this movie much more than I liked it personally. There's definitely some things to... I know you researched heavily about like Roman politics probably and like historical significance that we missed out on. You're a Roman like historical expert or something. This might be like one of the greatest movies depicting that sort of time period. So
yeah, but he also went out of his way to make it so gross and grimy.
Yeah.
Like, oh, dude, like, he has that circus feel that he has in every Fellini movie, just like at the forefront of this movie. Like, everything feels like such a circus. It plays out as if it were a play, just on like a bigger scale.
That's what caught me off guard first, because like the opening scene feels like you're watching a stage production, and then kind of the sets and the like how the plot progressed just kind of like it blends in to the rest of the settings. I was kind of just like, holy shit, it was like off-putting at first, like how the movie looked, but
it is very like, it's almost a biblical epic, which is kind of a different from what I'm used to with Fellini. And I just want to preface by saying, I think Fellini is an amazing director. I think he's an amazing director. This movie didn't really hit for me compared to the other ones. I thought it was kind of like, even though the sets and the way it was shot was very cool, it still felt like a little bit bland to me. I don't know, I think maybe it was just because I wasn't super engaged with what was going on. I couldn't really follow the story about this guy going through different, it's a story about a guy going through like different situations, and it's like it is very epic in scale because he's like going from like different like places, and he's like a king, kind of a noble at one point, and then he becomes like a slave, I think, and then he's like on a ship, and goes through all these like stages, and it's like 2 hours and 10 minutes, and but I will say like the set production is really what stood out to me. And then there's a scene where like they're in this it's like a building. I don't know if it's like a peasant building or whatever it is, and there's like an earthquake, and
it's like a slum kind of.
Yeah, it's like a slum, but when they did that scene where like it all crumbles down and shit, bro,
cool.
That's beautiful.
That was cool.
Yeah, that was amazing, dude.
Yeah.
And this is this is a very sexual movie too. There's a lot of like boobs and butts, and there's some penises in it too.
There was some dicks, and Fellini was a horny director for sure.
Oh yeah.
I didn't expect 8.5 to be as horny as it was either. So
this makes 8.5 like look like really like G.
Yeah,
I know, it really does, yeah. The thing about this movie that I'm probably higher on it than like you guys, just probably because I'm biased, he really missed his Fellini touch, where I feel like he's so good at evoking emotion. You like watch La Strada, Anticabiria, Evitioni, like they have this distinct emotion that the characters go through, and it resonates with the audience no matter like who you are. And I feel like this doesn't have that, but it substitutes it with amazing sets, and that trade-off didn't really land. I still felt like he had something to show for this. I didn't regret seeing this movie.
No, not at all. I kind of agree with what Felix was saying. Like, I love Fellini, and I'm more geared towards, like, his earlier work, like you said, Cabiria and La Strada, that we kind of had these heightened neo-realist movies that were really focused on character and emotion, not necessarily, like, overly stylized, like his later films got, that were much more... If it's kind of like Godard in a way, like, Godard had movies that were, like, very personal and small at the beginning, that kind of got like really neo-political and huge and ambitious later on.
Very revolutionary.
Yeah.
He also had his late 60s sort of Maoist communist revolutionary phase.
Exactly, yeah. And Fellini, I don't think was as outwardly like political or anything like that, but they definitely became more self-indulgent and, you know, like explore, like see how far they can push the boundaries. And I tend to like directors more when they're like grounded back in like we said with Fellini, but I still want to see Amarcord and like see, because like I feel like he found his footing later on too.
Oh yeah, Amarcord he kind of shifts back. It's almost like he's doing the neo-realist family thing, but also he's also really horny in that movie.
Yeah,
because I think
of course
during that period of the 60s sort of revolution, like directors, especially in Italy, with people like Pasolini really pushing the boundaries, they could be more expressive with like sexuality and stuff like that after like the revolution.
I think he goes through this kind of like, so after La Dolce Vita, like he really took like a step back because apparently he was just having like crazy panic attacks on set and just like really couldn't handle stuff. And so he did a very self-indulgent film, 8.5, and it's like it's one of the most like revered movies in like cinema essentially. But then I feel like he like that almost gave him permission to like when director like gets too much power, because I haven't seen Julia of the Spirits yet, but apparently it's like very similar to 8.5, and then he comes out with this Fellini Satyricon, and he did Roma, and then he did Amarcord. I feel like he definitely like he kind of goes up and then he lands a little bit, because Amarcord seems like almost like it could have been made next to like, you know, La Strada essentially. It was like, it was very, very similar to like Evitioni and stuff like that.
When I was looking up this movie and stuff, I watched this Trailers from Hell video with John Landis reacting to like a trailer of Fellini Satyricon. And when we first started watching, when we watched the movie, I was thinking to myself, like we were talking about it, we were saying how who the fuck would like watch this? Like this is so esoteric and like no one's ever heard of this movie, blah 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 blah, like it's boring or whatever. But John Landis was saying how like he like really liked the movie, like he thought it was like crazy, and he said that it actually was very successful in Europe and in America when it was released.
It was nominated for an Oscar.
Yeah, and which is very surprising to me, because I was like, dude, who the fuck would want to watch this? But apparently like it was actually very successful in America, surprisingly.
I feel like based off of 8.5 though, I think he had that. I was thinking like Kurosawa, I think there was a film he made, something in the 70s, where it got nominated for Best International Feature, and that's kind of when everyone started to recognize him in America.
For which movie?
It might have been, I can't remember the name, I might have to tell you later.
In the 70s?
Denzo something. Yeah, it was...
Who are we talking about?
Kurosawa.
Oh, okay.
Because I was making an equivalency, because like he became popular in the mainstream based off one movie, and then everyone went back and watched everything else. I feel like Fellini, it was like that for 8.5, where it's like directors were like, holy shit, like this really resonates with me, and then all of his other movies got rediscovered.
I think that does happen with a lot of directors.
Yeah,
like
there's a bunch of examples.
Yeah.
Well, they're not. Their movies are kind of like, you know. I think a lot of even like someone with Tarantino. I think a lot of people went back and revisited Reservoir Dogs like after Pulp Fiction.
Yeah,
because that was just like a Sundance hit, and I know like hearing my parents talk about they saw it after they saw Pulp Fiction. Yeah, and they were like even more shocked by the violence in that movie. Same with a ton of modern directors too. Like the one smash hit, you recontextualize all their movies.
Yeah, for sure.
There's two late Italian movies, like late 60s Italian movies that I love, that I wanted to talk about real quick.
Yeah.
There's a movie called La Grande Bouffe, which is a very, like you were saying, how this movie pushed the boundaries in terms of content.
Mm-hmm.
This movie's very much about hedonism.
For sure.
And like how art and hedonism kind of go hand in hand.
Mm-hmm.
And like it's like one of my favorite Italian movies ever made. And it's kind of rare to see, but I think it's on like Tubi or something. I saw it on the big screen. This movie's masterful. So I would highly recommend check out La Grande Bouffe.
Mm-hmm.
And also I just want to mention Salo real quick, because I know Felix, and we always talk about watching it because I know he's going to love that movie and just like the content and everything.
Yeah.
And like Pasolini was like, he was like the new wave of like extremist, Italian directors and that movie.
Well, I was listening to Eli Roth is on the Video Archives podcast talking about giallos and stuff, and he says that like Pasolini is actually the most influential director when it comes to content, because he was really the first person to really push all the boundaries and allow like the censors to let like people like Dario Argento and like Fulci and like break through and with like violence and stuff. So I need to see Salo. Like
definitely one of the most important directors ever. Got killed for your work. Like that says something about his impact on society.
So he made so many movies that were like opposing fascism and all these things.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Salo has like a kind of a dubious reputation where people just think it's a gross out movie, in terms of the content, which it is, but like it has so much more like underneath the initial, shock value that the movie has. And I thought it was super layered, and I like want to buy the Criterion and rewatch it many times because I feel like there's a lot of layers to it. So big recommendation for those two.
Yeah, for sure. And is Fellini like kind of the GOAT, like Italian director?
He's my
for you, yeah.
He's my GOAT of like all time, dude. Just all time.
I like Vittorio De Sica because I'm more of a neorealist guy because he did Bicycle Thieves and Umberto D.
But Dino Risi, who made Il Sorpasso. That's another good one. Bernardo Bertolucci, definitely up there.
Michelangelo.
Antonioni. Dude, Antonioni for me might be actually number one if I'm keeping it 100 with the neorealist shit.
Yeah.
When it comes to neorealist shit, I think I'm going to put Michelangelo Antonioni over Fellini. But I think as a whole, like Fellini's filmography might be a little bit above. But I think personally, Michelangelo Antonioni, my favorite neorealist director. I got to throw in Roberto Rossellini in there as well. Of course,
yeah. He's one of the best neorealist directors too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
really important.
Yeah, and you also have Ermanno Olmi's.
Yeah, I was going to shout out Il Posto. Yeah. I don't know him as much of a director. I haven't seen his other movies, but Il Posto is such a underappreciated neorealist film about like the working class in the 60s, like during industrialization and stuff. It's a really important movie and really engaging.